long-winded, running through this life like it was mine, never settling, but setting every goal high. 1,000 burpees on the path of my own destruction or success. But what is the mistake without the lesson? See, the best teacher in life is your own experience. None of us know who we are until we fail. They say every man is defined by his actions to any given situation. Well, who would you want to define you? Someone else or yourself? Whatever you do, homie, give your heart to it and stay strong. Those words alone were some of the most inspirational words that I happened to just stumble on my way to a workshop for a podcast. See, I was touched that day. It was earlier this week. It made me feel, still to this day, as if I don't have anything going on in my life, and made me realize how much I'm on the path of my own self-destruction. See, I do a lot, but sometimes it doesn't lead me to the best of choices. And I just stumbled on that song because it just came onto my freaking station. I knew who Nipsey Hussle is, didn't really know a lot about him like most people probably do, as much as I do now. But after learning much about him, learning much about his life and what he did, I can't believe, I wish I knew about this guy sooner. You know, this guy is inspirational to the point where it makes me want to do more with my life and retrospectively look at all the things that I did and where it led me to. All the things that this guy talks about is motivation. You keep going, you don't quit. That's always been kind of like my mantra, but I never really lived it so much. You know, my mom has taught me that. My dad has taught me that. Old things I read about have taught me that. But over and over again, I reinvent myself with new and new leaders, new and new heroes. And Nipsey Hussle is one of them. If you break down the sentence of each of those poems, it's not that Nipsey Hussle didn't write it, and of course someone that he knew wrote it, and maybe it was dedicated to him, and who knows. But the fact that it is that poem speaks to everyone, and of course Nipsey would put that in his album. Slauson Boy, it was a great song. And it's so interesting to me that a Crip would even associate himself with the blood in Sacramento, but that's just how business is. And that's how the world works sometimes, right? I think it's crazy to me that if you go and break down each one of those sentences, he preps you talking about life. And he tells you the point of the question that would you want someone else to define you, or will it be yourself? See, that's a strong poise, because this man is writing this sentence from prison. Someone else can define you in prison, as in making you a bitch or someone you're going to lose your life to. That is a defining moment, especially in front of the eyes of many people in prison. Now, in that very moment, he says, along in the poem, they say every situation defines who you are. Take any situation that you go through at this very moment. Who would you want to define you? Would you want your boss to define you when you fucking get pissed off at something that's unfair? Would you want your some asshole on the street to define you because of how you're dressed or who you are, or if you're gay, if you're not, if you're straight, if you're bisexual, whatever? Would you want that asshole to tell you who you are? That's why I truly believe that what that poem says speaks to you. It speaks to people. Who would you want to define you in that very moment? And at the very end, it tells you to stay strong, to put your heart into what you're doing. If you don't have no dream, what's the purpose of waking up? I'm not a legend, but one day I'll be mentioned. The most beautifulest thing is realizing your potential and never stopping to exploit it. We are our own worst enemy. We are our own fucking best friend. We are our own best ally. You got to use what was gifted to you, what God gave you, what your mama gave you, what your daddy gave you. It doesn't matter who gave it to you or how you got it. Just use it. Don't abuse it, but use it. And welcome to the Just Call It podcast. Going back on the topic about Nipsey Hussle. I just got finished watching the Victory Lap, the Last Lap documentary, which was released March 31st, 2021, which is about 2 years, a little bit after his death. And, I researched a little bit about him, about his life, find out who he is, what he went through, and all those things. And it's amazing. It's a shame that after somebody's death is usually when we find the true meaning behind their whole actions and everything, That after somebody's death, we then appreciate those people. Well, it's not like Nipsey Hussle could have touched the whole world and, through the graces of God, he could have touched it and then things would have been different. He was a little bit more noticed or something like that. I don't think so. I just think that, it goes with anything, people live, and whether we don't pay attention to the living, we pay attention more to the meanings, we pay attention more to the message sometimes. After people are dead or no longer in our lives and we're no longer needing those people, it's just a sad thing that when people are dead is that when we miss those people the most. I think a lot of people obviously miss Nipsey Hussle. They miss everything that most people that were close to him, all obviously, and everything that he did. Learning about all the kind of business ventures that he did as a rap artist. And to me, it spoke to me mainly about his life as, one, he was a humanitarian, man. He found ways to negotiate and talk to the right people and to get certain things in motion, You can talk to a million people passing down the street and think of a really good idea, but it doesn't mean any of that's going to come to fruition. So for him to come out as an artist, to touch people's lives in a way that was good, and of course the documentary probably didn't talk about all the lies he kind of screwed up, maybe with being a gangster and selling drugs and all that shit, but that's the life. Those are the cards that he was dealt, and he did the best thing that he could with them, And he did one hell of a good play, He made a lot out of it. I was looking at something about his statistics about him, and he somewhere invested over more than $200 million in investments, to new companies, to business ventures of his own, to maybe helping people with their business, with doing business ventures with his brother, who's still alive. Who am I to talk about someone like him, I really don't have a solid foundation on who he is as an individual, but learning so much about him after his death kind of makes me feel, he was a legend, in his own right. I think when you are able, to me as an artist, as a poet, as somebody who's done art myself and things like that, and probably never to his level, but the things that he talked about, the way he spoke about them and the way he carried himself, the way, I think that vibe about him kind of was very influential, It was very positive. Like, he didn't really have a lot of bad shit to say so much, on his music. He's very like, I keep it pushing, I keep hustling, I keep going, and his motto is that he never quit. He said that, in some of his interviews, the only thing that makes me different is that anybody that can be going through the same thing, the only thing that makes me different between everybody is that I don't quit. To me, it's a beautiful thing because it's very easy to quit. A lot of people quit on a lot of their goals. They never make it through life. People quit their jobs. They quit a lot of things. It's easy to quit sometimes, and sometimes it's hard to leave those things. But even the hardest thing is to stay in the same path and never quit. I'm a person who's always reinventing themselves in life, and sometimes when you reinvent yourself in life, you reinvent your goals, you reinvent your visions, you reinvent where you're going. But in that process, sometimes you always look back and think about, what is it that is your true calling, and what path you should have stayed on for so long. My love has always been for art, for poetry, for doing creative things, but I find it so hard to stimulate that at times, or be able to keep being on that track and that motivation to talk to the right people, to connect, to market myself, and do all those things to be able to reach a higher level of artistry. But it's really hard to make a life out of that. It's really hard to enjoy yourself, and I think that's one of the things that Nipsey Hussle touched on, is that he never, he said that he's went through a lot of the emotions he's gone through in his life, that, he's already felt everything, And I think that's the most beautiful thing, is when someone expresses how long they've been on a path doing that one thing, they express that they've seen it all, and it's true. When you see those people in action or in work, they really did do it all, I think that's one thing to really respect and admire about Nipsey Hussle, that he wasn't just somebody who just came from the streets and just did a lot of shit and just randomly became a good artist. He did a lot of positive things that were to be respected as an individual, especially as a man, to look at that and to look at him and say, that's almost like the kind of man that I would want to be. He's an idol of somebody that you would think that is a hard worker, is a go-getter, never takes no for an answer. That's somebody, to me, sparks inspiration, and he also said in his interviews that inspiration is, and being inspired is one of the most noble things you can do, the most greatest. So I personally think him as a man, watching everything that I learned about him these past couple days, listening to his music, you really get to see who he really is and why people idolized him. And still to this day, I still say it's very sad to look at the most greatest people after they're dead. We should do more in this world where we show more appreciation to people who are making a difference to us. I wish there was a way of doing that, Maybe there's like So, just got finished watching the memorial service part of Nipsey Hussle and his brother, his older brother, Samuel. It was a powerful speech. I'm not sure if he had anything planned. That was just right off the top, everything that he really felt about it. When I think of brothers and sisters and family, ancestry, and all that shit, man, it's deep, And for him to talk about his brother and such inspiration, such proudness about him, makes me think a lot about my life and my life about my brothers and sisters and everybody around me. However long it took, for my ancestors and my blood to make it to this point, to be talking here to this day, it took many blood, sweat, and tears. And even though on the soil I stand on is not where I'm really truly from, where my blood is grown, this is where I was born. I look at things like that very deeply, and to find it and make myself to this point of view, I almost feel like I don't even make my ancestors proud. When you think deeply about your life in that way, you think about how much you want to change. After watching the Nipsey Hussle memorial service with the brother's speech, that was the one I was most interested in because his brother did a lot with him. And not to mention, the brother relationship, I know what that's like. And the way this guy had it with his brother was pretty emotional. To me, I think what he had to say about his brother, about him being proud, was amazing. And everything that he went through, the stories that they were talking about buying the lot and somehow making it happen, man. And he was so proud, and that his brother lived and died where he was born and raised. I think those things all call for a demand of respect, It's so unreal, like I said earlier in the podcast, that you have to really realize someone's life afterwards.